On your right, that's the old train station of Ottawa, Union Station. It's now a office for the senators. That would be the politicians, not the hockey players. There's the canal right there. Now there should be some yachts lining up. Yeah, there's a couple. So they're waiting to go through the locks right over here on our left. So there are 8 locks, and it takes 2 hours to go up or down. So 15 minutes per lock. So we'll see those in a sec. There might be some boats going through. Alright, so there are the Ottawa locks. That's the Ottawa River right there. So I think I see some boats. Yep, some boats coming through right down there at the beginning. And right now we're on Wellington Street. So on your right, the Parliament. There are 3 buildings, East Block, West Block, and the Centre Block. Now they're renovating the Parliament, so we'll be closed for the next few years, but you can still walk around and see the statues. And on your left, you have the Prime Minister's office. Now I used to work in this building right here. I'm going to show you Trudeau's office in a second. So, my office, just for fun, was right there, that window, but that's not important. So the second floor, right here, 3 windows at the very end. That's the Prime Minister's office right there. So all 5 fingers, wave hello to Trudeau. It's in Parliament, they're renovating it right now. One of the things they're actually doing to it is earthquake-proofing it. Ottawa gets 500 earthquakes a year, roughly 2 a day. And the buildings are over 100 years old, so they're in really rough shape. So they're earthquake-proofing the buildings now. They finished doing the West Block right here, so it looks a lot newer. But the other 2 buildings they're working on. So every day we get 2 mini earthquakes. We never feel them. We had a big one about, what was it now, 6 years ago. It was about a 7.1 on the Richter scale. So everyone was sent home that day and all the windows rattled. So hopefully it won't happen today. Now coming up straight ahead on your right, the big buildings there with the green roofs, they're the Confederation buildings, and they're the unofficial 4th and 5th buildings of the Parliament. This is where all the politicians have their offices, right over here. When they built the Parliament, there weren't that many politicians, and now we have, I believe, 308 representatives, so they built these buildings to house them all. Now coming up on your left, big glass buildings right over here, we have the Bank of Canada, so that's where they decide the interest rates and all the fun stuff like that. If you're a big fan of money, I know I am, love the stuff, can't get enough of it. There's a really nice currency museum inside the Bank of Canada. Ironically enough, the currency museum is the only free museum in Ottawa, so it's worth visiting. No free samples. Now, if you do plan on visiting any museums while you're in town, go online and make sure that A, they're open, and B, buy your tickets in advance, because they've been selling out like crazy. Now coming up on our right, we've got the Supreme Court of Canada. And inside the Supreme Court, there are 9 judges that want to talk to me next week about that thing I did a month ago. Alright. I've lived in the city most of my life, and I've never heard the church bells here. Alright, so there's the Supreme Court on your right. And on your left, you have the Department of Justice. Right over here. Now coming up on your right, this big building with the little windows coming up, that's the National Library and the Archives of Canada, right over there. Now when the Queen comes to Ottawa, she doesn't like to miss church, so she makes sure she goes. Goes on your left, right over here, the Christ Church Anglican Cathedral of Canada, the Queen's Church. So when the Queen's in Ottawa, that's where she goes. We'll see it in a second. Alright, so if the Queen were in Ottawa on a Sunday morning, that's where she'd be, right there. And coming up straight ahead on your left, you're going to see the 13 flags of the provinces and territories coming up right here. So they're in chronological order. So the first 4 flags after the Canadian, you have Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. That became Canada July the 1st, 1867. The others joined later on. So you have Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Manitoba, British Columbia, Prince Edward Island, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Newfoundland, Northwest Territories, Yukon, and Nunavut. And straight ahead we have the War Museum. Inside there's everything from the War of 1812, World War I, II, the Korean War, the Cold War, Afghanistan. If you look at the roof of the War Museum, you'll see some tiny windows. That's Morse code for lest we forget right there. So the top 2 letters are English, the bottom is French. Now today is Monday. It is Monday, yes it is. Today is Monday. All the museums are closed, so I won't even ask if anyone wants to hop out. Nobody's hopping out? No? Okay, good. As you drive by, you'll see the tanks and the jeeps in the windows. There are the 13 flags again. So the last one on the left, Nunavut, that joined in 1999. Every year, Turks and Caicos applies to join Canada, and every year we turn them down. But if there is a 14th province one day, it will be the Turks and Caicos, and 40 million Canadians will move to that tropical island. And I will be the first one, and I'll never come back. Alright, so there's war. So the museums here in Ottawa, they're huge. So if you ever do visit them, give yourself a whole day. Especially Museum of History, which you'll see in a minute. That's the biggest museum in Canada. Alright, so there are the tanks and the jeeps right there. Alright, so we're now leaving Ontario, and we're heading next door to Quebec, where we'll do touring French only. It's the law. Don't worry, there will be subtitles. So we're going to go over the Ottawa River, the border, and in a minute we'll be Gatineau, Quebec. Now they're actually in the process of converting all the old factories here into condos. So every old building you see on our left, this used to be a paper factory right over here. It's abandoned for 40 years, and they just turned it into luxury condos right there. So everything's looking completely different. We've got condos going up everywhere. If you want to have some fun later on this afternoon, on your right here, you can go zip lining. You start in Ontario, and you finish in Quebec. There's something to do. There you go. You guys can do that this afternoon. Alright. Nice view on your left right there. So Ottawa has 1 million people. Gatineau, 300,000. Now there are 100,000 civil servants in the nation's capital. 75% work on the Ottawa side, 25% work on the Gatineau side. So 100,000 people work for the federal government. It's the largest employer in the city. Now the capital of Ontario is Toronto, and the capital of Quebec is Quebec City. Those are provincial, but all of this is federal right here, Ottawa and Gatineau. So these buildings in front of us, all government departments. So in these buildings on our left, we have immigration, passport, I think Health Canada has some offices in there. So this is where the civil servants show up for work at 11 o'clock, take a 2-hour lunch break, come back, check their emails for 5 minutes, and then go home after a hard day of working for the federal government. I used to work for the government, so I'm allowed to make that joke. Now, these buildings right here, the Portage government offices, I believe there are 5 towers, and there are 10,000 people that work in these buildings alone. Now, with COVID, over the last 2 years, about 60 to 65% of government employees have been working from home. So most of the buildings are empty. And in fact, Ottawa right now, 50% of all the office buildings you see are empty. So they think they might be able to go back to work in January. We're kind of on standby. So for now, everyone's working from home or on a tour bus. Alright, so coming up straight ahead, we're going to see the Canadian Museum of History. Inside the museum, there's the world's largest collection of totem poles, postal museum, children's museum, history of Canada, IMAX cinemas, 4 million artifacts. Someone doesn't like Trudeau. They did something to his face right there. Yeah, they did that to the ones over here too. They had to take them out in the middle of the night and change them because what they did wasn't too pretty. All right, so coming up straight ahead, we're going to see the Canadian Museum of History. On our left, coming up right here, this is City Hall for Casino. Right there, and straight ahead, the museum. Now everyone get your cameras ready, because coming up on our right, best view of the Parliament ever. If you remember the old $1 bill, there's a picture of the Parliament on the back of it. That's the scene we're about to see in a minute. So our driver is going to go nice and slow so you can get a good picture. Alright, so here's the Museum of History. And nobody waiting for us. Nope, we're good. So if you look on your right, coming up in about 5 seconds, you will see the Parliament. And there it is. Just Photoshop the cranes. Alright, now if we have any hockey fans on board, coming up on our right hand side, we're going to see a statue of a very famous hockey player here in Quebec, Maurice the Rocket Richard, with the Montreal Canadiens. It's a shame he wasn't playing for Montreal a few weeks ago. We might have actually won the Stanley Cup, but Ottawa's going to win next year. So we're going to see Maurice in a second. Alright, so on your right, you'll see Maurice the Rocket Richard, and its actual size too. The Leafs were terrified of him. There he is right there. When he played for Montreal, he made a whopping $25,000 a year. Now the province of Quebec right here is a population of 9 million people. It's the second most populated province in Canada. The most populated is Ontario with 15 million. Second is Quebec with 9. And the largest city here in Quebec is Montreal with 4 million people. So Montreal is about a 2-hour drive from Ottawa. Quebec City is about 5. If you go the opposite direction, Toronto is about 4. And New York State is about 45 minutes down the road. If you want to drive to New York, though, it's about a 9-hour drive. And on your left, we have our own mini Niagara Falls, Rideau Falls, right over there. Now, if you look straight ahead on the left, right next to the train, you'll see a house with a lot of tombs. That's the home of Canada's first Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald. Lived and died in that home. Now the home of the British ambassador. Now Ottawa, being the capital of Canada, with all the embassies here, there are 130 embassies in Ottawa, and most of them are on Sussex Drive. So we're going to go see those embassies right now. Later on, we're going to see the biggest and most expensive embassy in Canada. I'm sure you can guess who owns that one. But right now, we're going to see the second most expensive embassy. Somebody asked me recently, Rudy, where's the Canadian embassy? I told them, it's in Washington. Then I had to explain to them what an embassy was. Alright, so right now we're going to see some smaller embassies down the second most expensive. Alright, so coming up on our left right here, this little building right here is the Embassy for Malaysia. There's Malaysia on your left. And right over down the corner we have the Japanese Embassy. So there's Japan on your left. And right here on our right, second most expensive embassy in Canada, Saudi Arabia at $150 million. So there are the Saudis right there. Here's the building department of global affairs. So this is a building that talks to all the other countries in the world right here. Lester B. Pearson, the popular prime minister, back in the 60s did many great things, gave us the Canadian flag in 65, free health care, won a Nobel Peace Prize. On our right, this is the old City Hall of Ottawa right over here. And it was City Hall for many years, but we built a new one downtown. This is all part of global affairs now. So the building behind us and this one, all the same office. And as we cross this bridge, we're heading into the oldest neighborhood in Ottawa, New Edinburgh. This is where the Scottish settled in the 1820s when Ottawa officially began. Now coming up on your right, you're going to see in a minute a little house with two white doors. That's the first schoolhouse of Ottawa, built in 1837. We'll see it in a second. Alright, so here's the first schoolhouse right there. At the time, there were 12 students. Now in Washington, you have 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. In London, you have 10 Downing Street. And in Ottawa, on your left, 24 Sussex, the Prime Minister's house. Now, the house is empty. Trudeau does not live here. They're renovating it. I'm going to show you where Trudeau is in a minute. We'll see 24 Sussex much better later on. It's hidden by all these trees. So right here with the statue of the Queen, we have Rideau Hall, the Governor General's residence. So the person who represents the Queen is the Queen of 16 countries: Canada, Australia, the Bahamas, New Zealand, Jamaica, etc., etc. And each of those countries has a representative, and ours lives way back there. Somebody's waving to us right here. So this is where the Prime Minister is living right now. So they're renovating 24 Sussex, and Trudeau is living back there. There's the Governor General's house, which is a big mansion, and behind it is a smaller house, which they've nicknamed the Cottage. And that's where Trudeau is. And the plumbing is from 1875, so it's being fixed up. And there it is, right there. 24 Sussex, the Prime Minister's house. Yeah, it's empty. Yeah. Yeah, right there. Can you guys see it? With the white frames? Yeah, right there. Ambassadors and tour guides live. Now, unfortunately, buses aren't allowed to drive through Rockcliffe. The RCMP would give us a big ticket. But if you have a car, drive through Rockcliffe. The homes are absolutely amazing. My favorite house in this neighborhood is the Japanese ambassador's mansion. It's ridiculous how big it is. And you'll see the RCMP patrol it 24 hours a day. Alright, so we're going to see some of the homes coming up right now. In a minute, we're going to see a little beige house behind some tall trees. That's the ambassador for Barbados. So as I said, there are 140 embassies in Ottawa. Most of the ambassadors live right here. Alright, so we're going to see some of those smaller homes right now. beige house coming up behind the trees. Right over here, there's Barbados. Right there, and this house on the corner, this is the ambassador for the United Arab Emirates. Right there. And the big wooden house next door, that's the ambassador for Denmark. There's Denmark right there. And these are the smaller homes. Now coming up, we're going to see a really nice view of Quebec and the Ottawa River right over here. And on your right, at the top of the hill, we have the American ambassador's house. So when the president comes to Ottawa, that's where he stays, right up there. The last president to come to Ottawa was Obama in 15. Trump didn't want to come, so oh well. So there are the Americans right up there. And on your left, the Ottawa River. So if you go straight ahead 200 kilometers, you get to Montreal, where the Ottawa River turns into the St. Lawrence, which eventually turns into the Atlantic Ocean. So if you keep going straight ahead, you'll hit Newfoundland and the Atlantic, just to show you how big Canada truly is. In St. John's, Newfoundland, you are closer to London, England, than you are to Vancouver, British Columbia. Canada is 6,000 kilometers from east to west. And on your right, another nice little house up on the hill. Right up there, the ambassador for Sweden. There's Sweden right there. All his furniture's from IKEA. Alright, so there's the Ottawa River. So you keep going straight ahead, you hit Montreal. And eventually the Atlantic. So right now, we're going to drive out to the RCMP stables, the home of the musical director, the RCMP Police, trained out in Saskatchewan. That's where they learn how to become the federal police officers. In Ottawa, it's where they learn how to ride the horses for the show. It's a musical ride. Now, there are only 32 horses here on the ground, so with any luck in a minute, we'll see some of them. Really good Mexican restaurant coming up on your left right over here. Good pub right here, Lieutenant's Pump. And there's the Pancho Villa Mexican restaurant, super good. Famous little diner, always a lineup. Wellington Street diner right here. Yeah, there's always a mega lineup. That's insane. And good wings right here, St. Louis. So you won't starve. On your right, big castle coming up, that is the Museum of Nature. Does anyone want to see the dinosaurs? No? Yeah. We're good. And there's a fire truck in front of us, so we'll just wait and see what they're doing. They're stopping in the middle of the road.
He said a fire truck was here.
Okay.
See? You see the fire truck? See?
Alright, so there's the Museum of Nature right there. Now coming up on your right.
Then nawakan benar ini pasti kan. Ini pasti kan.
So on our left, there's a really good little restaurant called the Whale's Bone right here. On your right, a 50s diner, Zach's, really good right there. On your left, an English pub, really good fish and chips. On your right, McDonald's. So there's a bit of everything there. You've got Portuguese